She never imagined exhaustion could feel this heavy. It wasn't just physical fatigue, it was the kind that settled deep in her bones, in her mind, in the quiet corners of her soul. She had been holding herself together for so long that she didn't notice when the cracks began. But now, they were everywhere. Life felt impossibly loud, painfully overwhelming, and she no longer had the strength to pretend she was fine. She was tired, not of one thing, but of everything. She sat on the edge of her bed that morning, staring at the floor as if the entire world were pressing down on her shoulders. Her chest felt tight. Her breath shallow. Her thoughts slow and heavy. She had reached a point where even small tasks, replying to a message, brushing her hair, choosing clothes, felt monumental. She didn't want to move. She didn't want to try. She didn't want to force herself through another day she wasn't sure she could survive. Her room was filled with soft morning light, but even that felt distant, almost indifferent. She noticed the quiet hum of the outside world, cars passing, birds singing, a dog barking in the distance. Life kept going, but she couldn't follow. She felt disconnected from everything, as if she were watching her own life from behind a thick layer of glass. She wondered when exactly she had lost herself. When the spark inside her had dimmed. When the fight had left her body. She whispered to herself, "I can't do this anymore." The words felt heavy, final, heartbreaking, as if they carried years of silent battles she never told anyone about. She had tried to stay strong. She had tried to push through. She had tried to convince herself things would get better. But strength built on exhaustion eventually collapses. And she was collapsing. There were moments she didn't recognize herself anymore. Moments where her reflection looked like a stranger. Not because she had changed physically, but because the light in her eyes, the one she once carried with pride, had dimmed to almost nothing. She missed the version of herself who believed in possibilities. Who trusted life. Who trusted herself. But that woman felt like a memory now, like someone she used to know a long time ago. Her bed had become both a refuge and a trap. She lay back for a moment, staring at the ceiling with empty eyes, feeling the weight of every disappointment, every silent failure, every dream that slipped through her fingers. It wasn't one big event that broke her, it was the accumulation of tiny heartbreaks, small defeats, and the endless effort to keep going when she felt she had nothing left inside. She closed her eyes and felt the ache behind them, the kind that comes from holding back tears for too long. She wasn't someone who cried easily, but lately it didn't take much. A memory. A thought. A sound. A feeling. She was unraveling quietly, piece by piece, and no one around her seemed to notice. Maybe she had hidden it too well. Maybe she had learned to smile too convincingly. Maybe she was tired of being the strong one. She wondered what would happen if she stopped trying. If she simply let go of everything she'd been forcing herself to hold. The idea felt terrifying and relieving at the same time. She wasn't thinking about giving up on life, but she was tempted to give up on the constant fight, the constant effort, the constant struggle to appear okay. She wanted rest. She wanted peace. She wanted a moment where she didn't have to carry the weight of everything alone. A quiet thought surfaced, almost whispered by her own soul, "How did I get here?" She didn't have the answer. All she knew was that she was tired, tired of pretending, tired of failing, tired of hoping. She felt like she was standing on the edge of something, but she didn't know if it was a breakdown or a breakthrough. Maybe both. Maybe neither. Maybe she had finally reached the limit where something had to change. And yet, somewhere beneath the exhaustion, beneath the pain, beneath the heaviness pressing against her heart, there was the faintest sensation. A flicker. A pulse. A tiny spark that refused to die. She didn't notice it yet, didn't recognize it, didn't believe in it, but something was shifting. Life was quietly rearranging itself. Something, or someone, was about to cross her path. And her story, though she didn't know it yet, was far from over. The day moved forward without her, and she felt herself drifting through it like a shadow. The exhaustion didn't fade, it deepened. Every step felt heavier, every thought slower, every emotion sharper. She tried to go through her routine, but nothing felt right. She couldn't focus. She couldn't connect. She couldn't pretend. The weariness inside her had become a storm, and she was standing in the center of it with no shelter in sight. At work, even the simplest tasks felt impossible. She stared at her screen, the words blurring, her mind foggy and numb. People spoke around her, but their voices felt far away, almost unreal. She felt like she was drowning in plain sight, unseen by everyone. A quiet ache spread across her chest, not pain, just a deep, aching emptiness that scared her more than anything else. This wasn't normal tiredness, this was a soul-level exhaustion. By lunchtime, she couldn't hold herself together anymore. She walked into the restroom, locked the stall, and pressed her back against the cold wall. Tears slid down her cheeks before she could stop them. She covered her mouth to keep from making a sound. She didn't want anyone to hear. She didn't want pity. She just wanted a moment where she didn't have to pretend she was fine. She cried quietly, the kind of cry that comes from months, maybe years, of holding everything inside. She whispered to herself, "Why does it feel like I'm failing at being human?" Her knees trembled, her breath shaky. She didn't want to give up on life, but she wanted to give up on trying so hard. On carrying everything alone. On forcing herself to survive when nothing felt worth it anymore. She wondered if anyone watching her life from the outside would ever guess how close she was to collapsing. And in that vulnerable moment, she felt something rise inside her, a silent question, almost like an echo toward whoever might understand. Have you ever felt this too? Have you ever reached a point where the exhaustion felt bigger than you? She wondered if anyone hearing her story might whisper back, "Yes. I've been there." Because sometimes, just knowing you aren't the only one breathing through heavy days can soften the weight a little. A thought surfaced, not strong, not loud, just a small, trembling truth: I can't keep carrying this alone. And if someone watching her journey felt the same way, she hoped they would leave a single word in the comments, a word that could hold their moment, their exhaustion, their truth. Something simple, like, "Still here." A small reminder that even in moments of despair, they had not disappeared. She wiped her face, took a trembling breath, and stepped back into the world that felt too big for her. And as she did, a quiet voice inside her whispered that maybe, just maybe, someone needed to hear her story too. If the person watching this felt seen, if they felt a piece of themselves reflected in her struggle, she hoped they would subscribe, not out of obligation, but so they wouldn't walk this journey alone. She wished someone would reach out and say, "You're not weak. You're just tired." And tired people deserve support too. So if this story touched someone's heart, if it reminded them of their own silent battles, she hoped they would share this video with someone who might need it today, a friend, a sibling, anyone quietly carrying more than they can handle. Because exhaustion grows heavier in silence. But healing begins the moment you realize you're not the only one fighting through the dark. And before she even knew it, life was already preparing the moment, and the stranger, who would rewrite her destiny. She remained on the living room floor for a long time, letting the weight of her exhaustion settle over her like a heavy blanket. Each breath felt thick, as if she were pulling air through layers of fog. Her body wasn't just tired, it felt drained of something deeper, something vital she couldn't name. The kind of fatigue that no amount of sleep could cure. The room around her looked the same as always, yet she felt disconnected from it, from everything she once cared about. The photos on the shelves, the books she used to enjoy, the plants she once tended to, they all felt like pieces of a life that didn't belong to her anymore. She studied them quietly, remembering the version of herself who had energy for those things. She got up slowly, her movements sluggish and unsteady, as if she were wading through water. She walked toward the kitchen with no real purpose, just hoping the change of space would give her something, a shift, a breath, anything. But even that small walk left her feeling winded and hollow. She poured herself a glass of water, but her hands trembled slightly as she lifted it. She hadn't realized how fragile she had become, how close she was to breaking. She leaned against the counter and closed her eyes for a moment, letting the coolness of the surface steady her. Her chest rose and fell with effort, not peace. When she returned to the living room, she sank into the sofa, folding into its cushions as though they were the only thing holding her upright. Her mind drifted to all the moments she pushed herself past limits, convincing herself she could handle just a little more. She didn't see the signs back then, or maybe she had chosen to ignore them. She sat there in the quiet, aware of how heavy her limbs felt, how foggy her thoughts had become. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't fear. It was depletion, pure and absolute. A sense of running on empty for far too long. She rubbed her palms together slowly, grounding herself in the movement, trying to find a fragment of calm inside her body. Her eyes landed on a blanket draped across the arm of the sofa. She pulled it over herself, not for warmth, but for comfort. The softness helped her breathe, even if just a little. She curled into it, feeling small, but also strangely safe, at least safer than she felt moving through the world outside her apartment. She stared at the ceiling for a long time, watching the play of shadows as afternoon light shifted toward evening. Her thoughts drifted but never settled. Nothing felt clear. Nothing felt like direction. Only a lingering ache in her chest, steady and slow, like a reminder of everything she hadn't addressed inside herself. Tears welled in her eyes again, silent and unforced. She let them fall this time, not fighting them. Crying didn't fix anything, but it released something inside her, something she didn't have the strength to hold anymore. She wiped her cheeks gently, exhausted even by the motion. And there, in that worn-out stillness, life continued moving around her quietly. The world outside remained unaware of the shift beginning within her, the tiny, fragile shift that would soon pull a stranger into her path. Someone she had never met. Someone who would interrupt her exhaustion. Someone who would help rewrite everything she thought she had lost. She woke the next morning feeling as if she hadn't slept at all. Her eyes burned, her head felt heavy, and her body ached in a way that didn't come from physical strain. It was the ache of someone carrying emotional weight for too long. She sat on the edge of the bed, her shoulders slumped forward, gathering strength just to stand. The mirror on the wall caught her reflection, and she paused, surprised by how unfamiliar she looked. There was a dullness in her eyes, a quiet fatigue etched into her expression. She touched her face gently, almost as if checking whether the person staring back still belonged to her. There was a time she radiated light. Now, she struggled to find even a glimmer. She moved slowly through her morning routine, brushing her hair, washing her face, making coffee she barely tasted. Everything felt mechanical, as though she were observing someone else living her life. Her mind wandered to the countless days she had pushed through exhaustion, hoping things would eventually get better. But each passing day had drained her a little more. She sat with her coffee in hand, the warmth seeping into her palms but not into her spirit. The apartment was quiet in a way that made the emptiness inside her louder. She stared at the steam rising from the mug, watching it dance and disappear, almost like the dreams she once held so tightly but had slowly let go of. The notifications on her phone buzzed from across the room, but she didn't move. Messages, deadlines, reminders, the world demanding energy she no longer had. She turned her gaze away, letting guilt settle in her chest. She used to be reliable. She used to be strong. Now, even simple tasks felt like mountains she couldn't climb. Her thoughts drifted to the moments when she almost told someone how tired she truly was but swallowed the words out of fear of being misunderstood. She didn't want pity. She didn't want advice. She just wanted the exhaustion to stop consuming her. She pressed a hand lightly to her chest as if trying to steady the storm swirling inside. The day passed in fragments, moving from room to room without real purpose, attempting tasks she abandoned halfway through. She kept trying to convince herself that pushing was the answer. But every attempt only deepened the feeling that she was running on fumes, trapped in a cycle she couldn't break. By late afternoon, a heaviness settled over her like a thick fog. She wrapped her arms around herself, feeling the weight of days, weeks, months spent fighting a battle no one else could see. A quiet surrender stirred in her chest, not because she didn't care anymore, but because she had nothing left to give. She found herself back on the sofa, curling into the same corner as the day before. The cushion shaped around her like it knew her pain. Her breath trembled as she exhaled, her body instinctively seeking stillness as a desperate refuge from the chaos inside her mind. She pulled the blanket closer, letting it cocoon her in a fragile sense of safety. And as evening settled in, the silence wrapped around her again. But this time, there was something faint beneath it, the early whisper of change, hovering quietly at the edges of her exhaustion. A shift she couldn't sense yet, but one that was already moving toward her, carried by the footsteps of a stranger she didn't know was coming. She spent the next few days moving through life like a ghost, present, but not really living. People crossed her path at work, in the hallway of her building, at the grocery store, but no one truly saw her. It was as if she had drifted into a quiet corner of the world where her presence no longer made an imprint. She felt invisible, not in a dramatic sense, but in the quiet, aching way that comes from being emotionally numb for too long. Each morning she tried to convince herself that the day might be different, that maybe she would feel something, motivation, clarity, purpose, anything. But the hours unfolded in the same muted rhythm. She followed her routines, completed the tasks she could manage, and let the rest fall away. She wasn't choosing to give up. She was simply too tired to try. She noticed how people around her seemed to move with intention, laughing, planning, dreaming, reaching for things. She admired them from a distance, remembering a time when she felt that same spark. Now, she could barely remember what it felt like to wake up with excitement instead of dread. Even the smallest responsibilities felt overwhelming, like carrying weight she was never meant to hold alone. She sat often by the window, watching life unfold outside, cars passing, strangers walking, the sky shifting colors as the day went on. The world kept moving, fast and relentless, while she remained still. Part of her longed to step back into that movement, to feel connected to something again. But she didn't know where to begin, and the silence inside her made everything feel unreachable. At work, she noticed how conversations continued without her. Not intentionally, people were simply absorbed in their own routines. But each moment of being overlooked added another layer to the quiet ache inside her chest. She answered emails, finished reports, and forced small smiles, but none of it touched the emptiness settling deeper into her bones. She returned home each evening feeling like she had run a marathon she never signed up for. The moment the door closed behind her, she felt the exhaustion rush over her like a wave. She would drop her bag on the floor, kick off her shoes, and sink into the first surface she could reach, the sofa, the bed, even the floor when the day had been particularly heavy. The isolation didn't come from being alone physically. It came from feeling disconnected from herself. She missed the version of her who used to dream boldly, who believed things would eventually work out, who saw meaning in small signs and beauty in ordinary moments. Now, everything felt filtered through a layer of fatigue that dulled even the brightest parts of her world. She tried to keep journals, telling herself writing might help her process the dense fog inside her mind. But the pages remained blank or filled with scattered thoughts that never found direction. She didn't know what to write anymore. She didn't know what she wanted. She only knew she felt stuck, trapped between who she used to be and who she no longer had the strength to become. There were moments when she caught herself holding her breath without meaning to, her body bracing as if expecting something to go wrong. This instinctive tension had become part of her, a quiet survival mode she didn't know how to turn off. She longed for softness, for ease, for even a small moment where she didn't feel so tightly wound. And yet, even in that heaviness, life was quietly rearranging itself around her. Hidden in the unfolding days, something was shifting in a direction she couldn't see. A meeting she didn't expect. A presence she didn't know she needed. A stranger whose path was already intersecting with hers, someone who would gently disrupt her exhaustion and awaken the part of her that still believed in destiny. She didn't expect anything different from that morning. She left home moving slowly, head down, shoulders heavy, wrapped in a tiredness that had become her second skin. The world around her felt distant, the noise of cars, the blur of people rushing past, the cold breeze brushing against her face. She walked on autopilot, just going through the motions, hoping the day wouldn't demand too much of her. At the corner cafe, she stepped inside seeking a moment of warmth before work. The smell of coffee lingered in the air, comforting in a quiet way. She ordered the same drink she always did and found a seat near the window. Her hands wrapped around the cup, trying to absorb something steady, something grounding. She gazed outside, watching life move in currents she no longer felt part of. When she looked down, she noticed her napkin wasn't blank. Someone had written on it, not messy handwriting, but soft, careful letters. At first, she thought it might have been a mistake, something left behind from another customer. But the message was simple and strangely familiar: you're not at the end. You're at the turning point. She stared at the words, feeling a quiet tremor inside her chest. She looked around the cafe, trying to understand who had placed it there. And then she saw him, a man sitting a few tables away, eyes gentle, expression calm, as if he already knew she had found it. He didn't approach. He didn't interrupt her space. He simply offered a small nod, as if acknowledging something she couldn't yet comprehend. There was no pressure in his gaze, just presence, the kind that feels grounding without saying a word. He stood up a moment later and walked toward the exit, leaving behind the faint smell of rain on his coat. But before stepping out, he placed something on the table. She had been sitting at a small, weathered notebook. Its cover was worn, edges softened by time. He didn't say a single word. He simply left it there, then disappeared into the morning crowd as if carried by the flow of the city. She hesitated before picking it up, unsure if it was truly meant for her. But something inside her, something quiet and instinctive, urged her to touch it. The moment her fingers brushed the cover, a strange warmth pulsed through her chest. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't overwhelming. It was subtle, like the tiniest spark lighting up in a place she thought had long gone dark. She opened the first page carefully. Inside, the handwriting was delicate and steady. The message written there felt as if someone had spoken directly to the part of her she had been hiding from the world. A tired heart isn't a failing heart. It's a heart that has carried too much alone. She exhaled a shaky breath, her eyes lingering on every word, absorbing them as though they carried a truth she had forgotten. Flipping through the pages, she noticed it wasn't just a notebook. It was a guide, a gentle one. Affirmations, reflections, small instructions on how to reconnect with herself, reminders of how energy shapes the world around her. It spoke about manifestation, about gratitude, about rewriting her narrative through intention. It mentioned the power of writing, of choosing new thoughts, of believing again. The more she read, the stronger the pull became. This notebook didn't feel random. It felt like a lifeline, like something meant to reach her exactly in the moment she was ready to collapse. It whispered possibility back into her bones. It felt like a door she wasn't expecting but desperately needed. It felt like destiny disguised in simplicity. Her hands trembled slightly as she closed it, holding it to her chest. She didn't know who the stranger was or why he gave it to her. But she knew, with a clarity she hadn't felt in months, that this was the first shift. The first sign. The first breath of change entering her life again. And deep within her tired spirit, a quiet certainty surfaced: this notebook was not just a notebook. It was the beginning of a new story. That evening, she sat on her bed with the notebook resting gently on her lap. Its weight felt different now, not heavy, but grounding, as if it carried both her exhaustion and the quiet possibility of something new. She opened to a blank page, letting her eyes rest on the untouched space. For the first time in a long while, the emptiness didn't feel threatening. It felt like an invitation. She picked up her pen with hands that trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the unfamiliar sensation of feeling something again. The notebook encouraged honesty, so she allowed the thoughts she had been holding back for months to spill onto the page. Her handwriting wavered, her sentences came out imperfect, but she kept going. What mattered was simply that she was writing again. She wrote her name at the top of the page, then paused before adding a single, raw intention beneath it: I want to feel alive again. The words stared back at her with a quiet truth she could no longer ignore. Seeing them written down stirred a warmth she hadn't felt in months, a tiny spark glowing in the dimness inside her chest. She flipped to the section on affirmations. They felt strange at first, almost distant from the heaviness she had been living with. But she whispered them anyway, carefully, softly: I deserve rest. I deserve renewal. I deserve peace. With each repetition, her voice grew steadier, as though her spirit recognized the sound of hope returning. Next came the visualizations, small ones, simple ones. She closed her eyes and imagined waking up with ease instead of dread, moving through her day with lightness instead of weight, smiling without forcing it. It wasn't a dramatic transformation, but the image alone made her chest loosen, her breath deepen. When she reached the gratitude section, something shifted in her even more. The notebook explained that gratitude was not about pretending things were good, it was about making space for light to return. She wrote slowly, letting each word sink into her tired heart: Today, I am grateful for one more chance to begin again. As she finished the sentence, a deeper realization rose within her: gratitude is the miracle that keeps the universe moving. She repeated the phrase silently, letting it echo through her mind. It didn't erase her exhaustion, but it softened it. It reminded her that even the smallest acknowledgement of light could begin to shift everything around her. She explored the notebook further, discovering gentle rituals she could begin that very night: lighting a candle before writing, placing her hand over her heart to steady her breath, grounding herself with a single intention before sleep. Each ritual felt like reclaiming a small part of herself. As the night grew darker, she felt a subtle shift inside her, faint, but unmistakable. Something within her was reorganizing, becoming softer, more open. She closed the notebook and held it against her chest, feeling its quiet power. It was no longer just a notebook. It was a mirror. A compass. A lifeline guiding her back to herself. And when she finally lay down to rest, she sensed something fragile but real moving inside her. Not hope. Not healing. But the very first breath of possibility, gentle, new, and deeply sacred. The next morning felt slightly different, though she couldn't explain why. The heaviness in her chest hadn't fully disappeared, but there was a softness around it now, as if something had loosened during the night. She moved through her apartment slowly, noticing details she had overlooked for months: the gentle glow of sunlight against the wall, the quiet hum of life beginning outside her window. None of it felt overwhelming. It simply felt gentle. As she reached for her notebook, she hesitated for a moment, surprised by the warmth she felt at the thought of opening it again. She wasn't used to longing for anything, especially not routines. But something about the journal manifestation made her feel anchored, as if it had become a small, steady light she could return to. She flipped to a new page and let her pen find its own rhythm. Later that day, As she walked to the cafe, she noticed a small feather on the ground, white, delicate, out of place. She paused, feeling a strange flutter in her chest. It wasn't dramatic, yet it felt meaningful in a way she couldn't fully articulate. She continued walking with a faint sense of curiosity blooming inside her, a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. Inside the cafe, the barista greeted her with an unexpected smile, as though he sensed something shifting in her energy. When she reached for her drink, the cup had a small sticker on it, a tiny gold star she didn't remember seeing before. It was silly, small, insignificant, and yet she felt warmth spread through her chest, the kind of warmth that whispers, "You're not alone." Throughout the day, little coincidences followed her, catching the elevator just in time, receiving an email she had been waiting for without realizing it, hearing a song she used to love playing softly in a store she passed by. None of these moments were big enough to change her life, but together they formed a quiet pattern, a gentle reassurance that something was shifting. Even her thoughts felt slightly clearer, as though fog had begun to lift. She found herself breathing deeper, walking slower, noticing the world with softer eyes. The exhaustion didn't vanish, but it no longer consumed her. She felt as though life itself was reaching toward her again, gently encouraging her to trust this new beginning. When she returned home, she lit a candle the way the notebook suggested. The flame flickered softly, casting warm light across her room. She sat with her journal manifestation open beside her, writing down the small moments she had experienced. Seeing them on paper made them feel even more real, tiny signs of alignment, quiet hints that her energy was changing. She whispered a few affirmations before sleep, her voice steadier than the night before. Something about the act of speaking them aloud made her feel grounded in a way she hadn't expected. She placed the notebook on her nightstand and allowed herself to lie back with a sense of peace slowly filling her chest. As she drifted towards sleep, a quiet sense of connection settled over her, to herself, to the world, to something unseen but undeniably present. It felt like the universe had taken a single step toward her, waiting for her to take one in return. And before the scene closes, a soft invitation rises. Comment, I receive. Over the following days, the atmosphere around her began to shift in ways she couldn't ignore. It wasn't sudden or dramatic, but it was unmistakable. There was a new lightness in the air, a sense of quiet alignment that made everything feel slightly different. She moved through her routine with more steadiness, more awareness, as if the world had adjusted itself by a fraction, just enough for her to notice. At work, she found herself finishing tasks with unexpected clarity. Ideas came more easily, flowing without the usual fog that had been clouding her thoughts for months. She even caught herself humming softly while organizing a project, surprised by the small spark of life returning to her voice. For the first time in a long time, things didn't feel like an uphill climb. One afternoon, her manager stopped by her desk and commented on the quality of a report she had submitted. The praise was gentle, casual, but it touched her deeply. It reminded her of the version of herself she once knew, the one who felt capable and confident. That simple acknowledgement softened something inside her that had been tense for far too long. Later that week, as she walked home, a light rain began to fall, soft droplets that felt more refreshing than cold. She didn't rush for shelter. Instead, she slowed down, letting the rain settle on her skin. Something about the moment felt symbolic, as if the world were washing away the heaviness she had carried. She tilted her head up slightly, allowing herself to feel present, grounded, alive. At a small bookstore she passed on her way home, the display by the door caught her eye. Sitting at the top was a book about energy, alignment, and self-discovery, themes that mirrored what she had been writing in her journal manifestation. She didn't plan to buy anything that day, but something drew her in. When she opened the first page, a sentence made her breath still. It was the same message she had written in her notebook the night before. The synchronicity stunned her. Back home, she lit her candle, opened her journal, and wrote about the moment with trembling hands. Seeing the pattern unfold on paper made everything feel even more magical. She no longer doubted whether something was shifting. The signs were too consistent, too aligned. She felt a quiet certainty building inside her, like a seed beginning to sprout. She began speaking her affirmations with more belief, letting each word seep deeper into her being. The heaviness didn't vanish completely, but it no longer dictated her day. There was space between her and the exhaustion now, enough room for possibility to breathe again. Each step she took felt guided by something gentle and unseen. Even her relationships began to change. A friend she hadn't spoken to in months reached out unexpectedly, sending a message filled with warmth and concern. Their conversation flowed naturally, reminding her of the connections she had once cherished. She felt herself soften, open, and reconnect in ways she thought she wasn't capable of anymore. Small opportunities began to show up, an invitation to a project, a compliment from a coworker, a moment of clarity during meditation. These were not coincidences. They were the early manifestations of the new energy she was cultivating. Her life wasn't transformed yet, but the momentum was undeniable. Something new was unfolding, gently, steadily. And in the quiet of her room, with her journal resting beside her, she realized the truth she had been too tired to see before: the universe wasn't asking her to be perfect. It was simply responding to the moment she decided to try again. The shift had begun. And it was only the beginning. The shift became clearer as the weeks unfolded. Her energy felt steadier, her mind more focused, and her heart quietly reopening to the world. It wasn't a sudden transformation, it was gentle, organic, the kind of change that grows from the inside out. She noticed herself moving with a new sense of purpose, even if she wasn't fully aware of it yet. One morning at work, her manager invited her into a meeting she hadn't expected to be part of. As she listened to the team discuss upcoming projects, she realized they were considering her for a role that required creativity, clarity, and leadership, qualities she had once feared she had lost. The recognition stirred something deep within her, a reminder that she still had something valuable to offer. Later that week, a coworker approached her with a quiet smile, explaining that they had noticed the calmness and focus she had been radiating lately. Their words caught her off guard, but in a good way. She hadn't realized her inner shift was visible to others. The thought warmed her chest, almost like a soft affirmation from the universe that she was aligning again. As the days passed, people began seeking her out, not for help, but for presence. Her energy had changed, becoming the kind that made others feel safe, grounded, understood. Friends she hadn't heard from in a long time reached out to reconnect, not knowing that their messages were arriving exactly when she needed reminders of her own worth. She was invited to collaborate on a small project that aligned with her creativity in ways she hadn't experienced in months. At first, she hesitated, unsure if she was ready. But something inside her, a quiet strength she had been rebuilding, encouraged her to say yes. The project reignited a part of her spirit she thought she had lost forever. During one late afternoon, as sunlight streamed through her window, she opened her journal manifestation and noticed the changes reflected in her words. Her entries had transformed from heavy confessions to softer, more hopeful reflections. She realized she had been growing even on the days she felt stagnant. Growth had been happening beneath the surface, steady and patient. She started taking small walks after work, allowing her mind to breathe. On one of those evenings, she passed by a mural she had never noticed before, an explosion of color and movement depicting transformation. Something about it resonated so deeply that she stopped and stood in front of it for a long time, letting the symbolism sink into her bones. The synchronicities continued, repeating numbers on clocks, unexpected compliments, moments of clarity appearing in the middle of ordinary tasks. Each sign felt like a gentle nudge from the universe, reminding her that the path she was walking was the right one. Her life wasn't perfect yet, but she could feel it aligning in ways she hadn't thought possible. Her nights became more peaceful. The restlessness that once kept her awake began to fade. She found herself writing with more depth, more courage, more vision. The exhaustion that had consumed her was slowly transforming into determination. It felt like planting seeds every night and waking up to the first sprouts of a future she had once been too tired to imagine. And as she sat quietly in her room one evening, candle flickering beside her, she felt something shift inside her fully, something strong, grounded, unshakable. It wasn't hope. It wasn't confidence. It was the quiet rise of belief, not just in the universe, but in herself. A belief that would soon become a mantra she repeated with unwavering truth. The following week carried a gentle momentum that she could no longer dismiss. Everything felt a little brighter, a little more fluid, as if life were responding to the energy she was finally beginning to nurture within herself. She walked through each day with a sense of presence she hadn't felt in months. Her steps felt steadier, her breath deeper, her thoughts clearer. It was as though she was finally re-entering her own life. During a team meeting, she contributed an idea she had been hesitant to share. To her surprise, the room fell into thoughtful silence, not the uncomfortable kind, but the kind that shows people are genuinely considering what was said. Then someone smiled, another nodded, and her manager praised her insight. The warmth that spread through her chest felt like a small victory, one she quietly carried with her for the rest of the day. As she walked home later that evening, the city lights shimmered in a way she hadn't noticed before. Everything around her felt alive, not overwhelming, but vibrant. She inhaled deeply, feeling the cool air fill her lungs with something that felt like renewal. And in that moment, a thought rose within her like a whisper from the universe itself: "Today I choose to believe." She repeated the phrase softly as she continued walking, letting the words settle into her bones. It wasn't just a mantra. It was a turning point. A declaration. A choice she was finally strong enough to make. The world around her seemed to respond instantly, the streetlights flickering gently, a soft breeze brushing her skin, the subtle hum of life mirroring her newfound clarity. At home, she opened her journal manifestation and wrote the mantra across a full page, the ink flowing smoothly as if guided by something beyond her. Seeing the words in her own handwriting made her shoulders soften, her breath slow. She traced the letters with her fingertips, feeling a connection to her inner power that she had forgotten how to access. As the days passed, that single mantra began guiding everything she did. It helped her pause before reacting, breathe before doubting, and step forward instead of retreating. Slowly, the world began reflecting that belief back to her in ways that felt both subtle and undeniable. A new opportunity at work. A moment of unexpected joy. A conversation that sparked a long-lost part of her creativity. She noticed that people around her were drawn to her more easily now. There was a calmness in her presence that inspired trust. Conversations flowed more naturally, and she found herself laughing, genuinely, for the first time in months. The heaviness she had carried for so long no longer sat at the forefront of her life. It faded into the background, replaced by clarity and groundedness. One evening, she found herself standing by her window, watching the sky shift from blue to shades of gold and violet. She pressed a hand gently against the glass, feeling the coolness beneath her palm. For the first time in a long while, she felt aligned, not with perfection or certainty, but with possibility. And that alone was enough. Her journal manifestation became a sanctuary. Each page felt like a conversation between her present self and her future self, a bridge connecting who she was with who she was becoming. She filled its pages with affirmations, dreams, intentions, reminders of strength, and gentle acknowledgments of her growth. It was no longer a tool. It had become a reflection of her rebirth. And with each new entry, with each new step she dared to take, she felt the truth settle deeper. Believing wasn't something that happened to her. It was something she chose. Something she committed to. Something she embodied with every breath. And in that commitment, her life began expanding in ways she never imagined she would experience again. As the weeks unfolded, her life began expanding in ways she hadn't expected. The shift was subtle at first, but unmistakable. Her days carried a new rhythm, steady, open, full of moments where the world seemed to bend gently in her favor. It didn't feel like luck. It felt like alignment. Like her inner energy was finally matching the life she had been quietly calling in through every word she wrote. At work, a project she had contributed to gained attention from higher levels of the company. Her ideas, once buried beneath exhaustion, now surfaced with clarity and strength. People listened. People valued. People noticed. Her presence, once quiet and withdrawn, now held a calm confidence that made others feel inspired just by being near her. She was invited to join a new team initiative, something creative, collaborative, and rooted in purpose. The kind of opportunity she would have dreamed about months ago but never believed she was capable of managing. Yet now, standing in this renewed version of herself, she knew she was ready. She accepted with a steady voice and a heart that beat with gratitude instead of fear. Her evenings felt different too. Instead of collapsing into the silence of her apartment, she found herself moving through her space with softness. Lighting candles. Playing quiet music. Opening her journal manifestation like it was a sacred ritual rather than a habit. The pages were no longer filled with pain, they were filled with direction, clarity, and gentle intention. She began noticing how opportunities flowed toward her without force. A coworker recommended her for a creative workshop. A distant acquaintance reached out with a potential collaboration. Even strangers seemed to greet her with more warmth. The world wasn't suddenly perfect, but it was responding to her in ways that felt harmonious. Her friendships deepened as well. Conversations became richer, filled with vulnerability and shared dreams. People confided in her, drawn to the calmness she now carried. They told her she felt different, lighter, more present, grounded. She smiled softly every time, knowing the transformation came not from pretending to be strong, but from finally choosing to believe in herself again. Financial doors began to open too. A delayed payment she had stopped expecting finally came through. An opportunity for extra income appeared unexpectedly. Small increases, small shifts, but together they created a sense of stability she hadn't felt in a long time. She no longer feared the future. She felt herself walking toward it with a quiet sense of power. Her mornings became sacred. She woke up earlier, not out of obligation but out of desire. She journaled with purpose, breathing deeply between each line she wrote. She created small rituals, stretching gently, sipping warm tea, standing by the window to welcome the first light of day. Every moment felt intentional, as though she were building a new foundation from the inside out. Her intuition became sharper. She could feel when something aligned and when it didn't. She began saying yes to opportunities that lifted her and no to anything that drained her. This simple shift created more space in her life, space for creativity, rest, connection, and the quiet joy she once believed she had lost forever. And through it all, her journal manifestation remained her anchor. A sacred space where she could return to herself, not to escape life, but to create it. Every intention she wrote began unfolding in small, magical ways. Every affirmation strengthened her heart. Every gratitude entry expanded her reality. Her life was no longer something happening to her. It was something she was actively co-creating. Her life continued unfolding with a momentum that felt both gentle and powerful, as if the universe were guiding her toward places she once considered unreachable. The days no longer blended into each other. Instead, they carried texture, meaning, and a sense of sacred movement. Her steps felt purposeful now, grounded in who she was becoming, not in who she had been when she felt lost. New opportunities began appearing with a kind of synchronicity that made her pause in quiet awe. A creative project she had been working on in silence caught the attention of someone influential. They reached out with genuine interest, asking if she would consider presenting her ideas at an upcoming event. She stared at the message for a long time, her heart swelling with a mix of surprise and gratitude. Months ago, she could barely get out of bed. Now, she was being invited into rooms she never imagined entering. She approached her work with renewed passion. Ideas flowed effortlessly, inspired by the clarity she had cultivated through her journal. She found joy in creating again, real joy, the kind that warmed her chest and reminded her of the version of herself she thought she had lost forever. Her creativity no longer felt forced, it felt like a natural extension of her healing. Financial abundance began arriving in unexpected ways. A side project blossomed into something lucrative. A small investment she had forgotten about produced a return at the perfect moment. Even the subtle shifts, discounts, opportunities, unexpected resources, seemed to align with her new frequency. She no longer operated from survival. She was learning to operate from trust. Her relationships also evolved. People who once drained her energy gently drifted out of her life, while others who matched her new vibration were drawn in effortlessly. Conversations became deeper, more meaningful, filled with inspiration and mutual support. She felt surrounded by people who lifted her spirit rather than weighing it down. One afternoon, while walking home, she found herself smiling for no reason. There was no specific event that triggered it, just a profound sense of peace. She realized that her heart no longer felt heavy. The tightness in her chest had faded. Her breath felt natural. Her presence felt whole. She was no longer surviving her life, she was participating in it. Her home transformed too. She rearranged furniture, added plants, brought in colors that made her heart feel lighter. Her space became a reflection of her inner world, alive, intentional, warm. Even her evenings carried a new energy. Instead of collapsing into exhaustion, she lit candles, journaled, played soft music, and allowed herself to unwind with grace. Her intuition guided her in ways she had never experienced before. She sensed when an opportunity was aligned, when someone's presence felt right, when a path was opening just for her. Decisions that once felt overwhelming now felt clear. She moved through life with a grounded elegance, trusting her inner voice more than she ever had. And every night, she returned to her journal manifestation. She wrote not to escape her reality, but to expand it. Her entries had shifted from longing to creation, from pain to purpose. She filled the pages with dreams that no longer felt distant. With intentions that carried weight. With gratitude that grew like blooming light inside her. The woman who once felt invisible now felt illuminated from within. Not because her life was flawless, but because she had rebuilt herself with tenderness, intention, and belief. And the universe responded accordingly, mirroring her inner transformation with the abundance she had always deserved. As her life continued expanding, recognition began arriving in ways she never anticipated. It wasn't explosive or overwhelming, it was steady, warm, and deeply affirming. The kind of recognition that grows from authenticity rather than performance. People noticed the transformation in her energy long before she fully understood how brightly she was shining. At work, colleagues sought her perspective more often, drawn to the clarity and calmness she carried. Her ideas, once overshadowed by exhaustion, now landed with confidence and resonance. Meetings that once drained her now felt like opportunities to express a version of herself she was finally proud of. Her voice carried weight, not because she forced it, but because she had rebuilt it from the inside out. She was invited to speak at a small creative panel, something she would have declined months ago out of fear and fatigue. But now, standing in front of a room filled with curious eyes, she felt steady. Her words flowed with grounded truth, shaped by every moment she had survived, learned from, and transformed. People listened, really listened, and afterward, several approached her to say she had inspired them. Even outside of professional spaces, she noticed how people gravitated toward her. Her presence felt softer, yet stronger. Strangers held eye contact longer. Friends reached out more often. She became someone others trusted, someone whose energy felt safe, wise, and comforting. It was a quiet kind of influence, one born from authenticity, not effort. Her online presence began shifting too. Things she shared from the heart resonated with people she had never met. Messages arrived from individuals thanking her for her vulnerability, her insight, her light. These notes felt like gentle reminders from the universe, confirmation that her journey wasn't just healing her, but illuminating the paths of others as well. One evening, while revisiting her journal manifestation, she noticed the evolution of her own handwriting. The early entries were heavy, uncertain, shaky. The recent ones were confident, fluid, alive. She traced her fingers over the words, feeling a deep reverence for the woman she had become, the one who kept going even when she was tired, lost, and ready to give up. Her days were no longer defined by survival. They were infused with intention. She made decisions with clarity, spoke with steadiness, and moved with grace. Healing hadn't made her perfect, it had made her powerful. The kind of power rooted in softness, intuition, and truth. As she walked through her city, she saw signs of her transformation reflected everywhere, in the colors of the sunset, in opportunities that aligned effortlessly, in conversations that nourished her instead of draining her. Life itself felt like it was opening doors just for her, guiding her toward a destiny she once believed she was too exhausted to reach. Her heart expanded with gratitude for everything she had overcome, everything she was creating, and everything that was still on its way. And as she stood in the middle of her living room that evening, bathed in golden light, she felt the universe speaking through her transformation. This is what happens when you don't give up on yourself. Before the scene closes, a gentle invitation rises, soft, warm, aligned. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment sharing what you felt, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of your journey. Her transformation was not shaped by one dramatic moment, but by the quiet accumulation of small choices. Each step she took toward herself created a ripple, and over time those ripples became a wave strong enough to lift her out of the darkness she once believed would drown her. The woman who once felt fragile and exhausted now stood rooted in her own strength, steady in a way that only someone who has faced themselves truly can be. She began to see that the universe had been guiding her long before she noticed the signs. The moments that once felt like endings revealed themselves as beginnings, redirecting her toward the life she was meant to live. Every setback shaped her resilience. Every tear carved space within her for deeper wisdom. Every night she survived became the foundation for the dawn she eventually stepped into. Her journal manifestation became the living map of her journey. As she traced her fingers over the pages, she could see the shift in her energy, from fear to faith, from exhaustion to clarity, from collapse to creation. She understood now that the power had never been in the notebook itself, but in the decision to show up to its pages, again and again, even when she felt broken. She learned how to trust herself in ways that felt sacred. When challenges appeared, she no longer questioned her ability to face them. The strength she once doubted now lived quietly in her bones. She moved through her days with a grounded certainty, knowing she had rebuilt herself from the deepest part of her soul. Her resilience was no longer a survival mechanism. It had become her identity. As she walked through life, people naturally gravitated toward her light. There was something unmistakable about the calmness she carried, something magnetic in the steadiness of her presence. She no longer needed to prove anything. Her energy spoke for her. Opportunities appeared in alignment with her growth. Connections deepened. Recognition arrived in ways that felt genuine and earned. One night, she stood by her window, looking over the soft glow of the city. She pressed a hand to her heart and felt the fullness of everything she had overcome. She thought about the stranger who left her the notebook, the moment that changed everything, the version of herself who almost gave up. Gratitude washed over her, gratitude for the journey, the transformation, the universe that had been whispering to her all along. She realized she was not returning to who she used to be. She was becoming someone new, someone aligned with her truth, connected to her intuition, and deeply aware of her own power. She wasn't simply living. She was creating. Her life was no longer defined by what she had lost, but by everything she was now ready to embrace. Her apartment felt warm that night, lit by the soft glow of candles and the quiet hum of possibility. She held her journal manifestation close, knowing its pages contained both her past and her future. She breathed deeply, letting the stillness settle around her. The silence no longer felt heavy. It felt sacred. As she closed her eyes, one truth rose gently within her: the day she almost gave up was the day destiny began. The moment she surrendered was the moment the universe stepped forward. She was never abandoned, never forgotten. She was becoming. And now, before the story closes, a final invitation flows, simple, soft, and aligned with the journey she walked. If this story touched you, comment the word destiny. Subscribe to the channel to continue walking this path of transformation. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that their story is not over. And leave a gesture of gratitude in the comments. Your light continues the movement of this universe.